Hello and welcome to Chuck's Diecast Car and Model Reviews. Today we are taking a look at this model. This here is the Ferrari 333 SP. This model is made by, as you can see, Hot Wheels and is in 1/18 scale. I got this model many years ago. I probably got this model 20 years ago. It is a pretty neat model, pretty neat car as well, with an interesting story behind it. First of all, let me start out by saying that Ferrari is putting out a new endurance car that they're going to be racing at, Le Mans and also at the 12 Hours of Sebring and so on and so forth. And they are advertising that this is the first Ferrari endurance car made in the last 50 years. Technically that's true, but it's not exactly true because the Ferrari 333 SP raced in the late 90s to early 2000s. The reason why Ferrari can make this claim for their new car is that the last factory-made Ferrari endurance car was the Ferrari 512, and it was last raced, at Le Mans in like 1972 or 73, I guess. But this car is still called a Ferrari. But it was not built by the Ferrari factory. It was built by Dallara. Dallara, of course, makes cars for modern IndyCar. They build the car for the Haas Formula One racing team. I believe they also build the cars for GP2. And actually, Dallara builds the chassis, I believe, for the modern BMW endurance car that BMW has just started racing as well. So again, technically it's not a Ferrari, it's a Dallara, but it has a Ferrari motor in it. So how did that come about? Well, a guy by the name of Gian Piero Moretti, who was the owner or is the owner of the company Momo that you may be familiar with, because they make, racing seats, they make racing suits, they make shift knobs, they make car wheels, they make steering wheels, all kinds of, sort of aftermarket car stuff. He's also an amateur racer, and he wanted a car that he could race. So he went to Ferrari and said, hey, can you build me a car? They said, well, we can't, but we can build you an engine. So what they did was they took the Ferrari V12 Formula One motor at the time, and basically they bored it out from 3.5 liters to 4 liters, down rated it a bit by about 50 horsepower. I think it had about 600 horsepower to make it, somewhat more reliable, and then allowed, Dallara to build the chassis, and the car actually had a fair amount of success. It raced and won at the 12 Hours of Sebring, and a few other races. It never won at Le Mans, but it did have a pretty decent racing record. I actually saw a 333 SP race back in the late 90s at the track that was here locally called Pikes Peak International Raceway. It's still around, but they just do sort of club racing now, really. But back then they actually held some pretty decent events here. I mean, they held second level NASCAR stuff. They held IndyCar races here. They held the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series and World Superbike here. And then they also held a race using the Ferrari 333 SP, and that was at the time known as World Sports Car. It was made of these Ferraris plus Riley and Scott racers. There were a lot of big guys that raced in the series, including Wayne Taylor and so on and so forth. So I actually got to see this car race, although honestly I can't tell you who the finisher was because it's been, or who the winner was, I should say, because it's been so long. But it was certainly neat seeing these cars race, these cars race, and to see that race, because not only did it have these open cockpit prototype racers like this, but they also had the Porsche GT1. They had the Panos, I can't remember, Panos GT, I believe, and also the Lister Storm Racing in a different class as well. So that was pretty neat to see as well. But anyway, let's go ahead and take a look at this model here. First of all, you can see that it has no livery, which is kind of unfortunate. Hot Wheels did sell a version with, the livery on it of, I believe, Momo. And they even sold the Momo liveried version that had, staining on it, like oil and dirt stains on it, like it had been through a race, which was pretty neat. But the only one that was available for me was this, unmarked version. It does have some livery on the side here, as you can see, just not the big stuff, Brembo SKF, 2B, exhaust, Champion spark plugs, Morelli ignition. Unfortunately, this car does have some sort of a black stain on the paint there. You can see that the car has OZ wheels on it. They did a good job for, on those wheels. But it's kind of odd that it has OZ wheels as opposed to Momo wheels, I guess you'd say. And you can see that it does have the brake discs back there that do not turn with the wheels. And you can see here from the front, there's not a lot of detail in this model. There's not much to see, really. It's a race car, so it's pretty basic. But you can see here that it does have not much detail in the headlights. It doesn't have open slots, for the wheel vents and the wheel arches. So that's a bit unfortunate. However, it does have pretty decent detail in the cockpit, as you can see here. And I do like the fact that they actually do have seat belts with separate buckles and everything like that in there. So that's nice. Not much to see here in the dash either. Like I said, race cars have pretty basic stuff in their cars, so there's not really that much to see. When you look at the back here, again, the vents are not open. You can see the exhaust back there. Interestingly, notice that it does not have an extractor ramp for aerodynamic effect and downforce at the back of the car here, and that's because it was not allowed. Prototype cars like this had to have a fully flat bottom, which of course reduced downforce, but also led to problems in that the cars would sometimes get a little bit of air underneath the nose, and then that would cause the nose to lift up. It would catch a little bit more air, and then the car would just basically go airborne. If you've seen footage of the Mercedes Le Mans car from, I believe, 1990 97 or 98 when one of them flew about 50 feet in the air and backwards and into the trees. You'll know what I'm talking about. But anyway, let's go ahead and take a look under the hood here. It does have a removable engine cover, which is nice. However, it is a little bit tough to remove. Not too much to see here. I mean, you can see they did a decent job on the rear suspension. You can see the dual wishbones back here. You can see the valve covers and so on and so forth. By the way, for those of you who are wondering, this vertical post here is an air jack. So they just attach an air line to the car, and the whole car would lift up, partially with that jack. But again, you know, not too much to see. You can see the air intake, and of course the air intake comes from the underneath the roll cage there. And so you know, again, like you know, any race car, it's pretty basic. There's not too much to see because a lot of it's just essentially covered. And all in all, it's not a bad model for of course, the price I paid for it, and for the details that you would actually see. So anyway, that is it for today. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if so, please go ahead and like and subscribe.